Okay, welcome. This is the end. The plane is about to land, and it looks like we're going to get there pretty safely. Obviously, thank you everyone for all of your efforts. This conference is one of the most meaningful things that I get to participate in every year. You guys are front line, you're first responders, you're fighters, and you're not only fighting for your communities, you're fighting for the soul of our nation. And I greatly appreciate that work. In our last discussion here today, we are going to talk about impact and how summer can impact inclusion and equity. And so, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the vice chair of NSLA, and I had the good fortune to go to Duke. But most importantly, as the vice chair of NSLA, I basically work for Aaron and for Jim. And so, a few points on equity. I think the biggest point I always tell people is that talent, hard work, and effort are boundless. They know no borders. And you can find talent, effort, and hard work in any corner of this country. Any state, red, blue, purple, you can find it. It is there. On the other hand, opportunity is boundless in this country, but it's limited. It is safe to say, and sadly, that every person in this room will not get the same amount of opportunities. Some people will get 10, some people will get 2. Some of those things will be dictated by, zip code, where you live, what color you are, what your mom and dad do, like whatever it may be. And that is an unfortunate thing. But that is why the work that you guys do is helping to cover those gaps, to make sure that opportunities are finding all the people who are working hard, who are giving effort. Those are the things that are truly, truly meaningful. So the lessons that I've learned on these things, I will give you a couple thoughts, one from Coach K, one from Obama. So for Coach K, he would always say, be ready for your shot. And so what does that mean? You got to be ready for your shot, because you never know if the shot or play that you're going to have to make is going to win a championship. And you may get 1, you may get 10. But if you get your 1 and you're not ready, you won't be able to look yourself in the mirror in the morning. So do your prep, show up, be ready, mentally, physically. And Barack Obama, 44th president of the United States, he would always tell me that, what we do matters. Every day, the things that we do have an impact. Even when we think it doesn't matter, even when we think people aren't looking, even when we think that somehow the task might be very small. Even in those instances, continue to push forward, because what you do does matter, and the impact that you have will be lasting. And lastly, inclusion. Inclusion is the opportunity that we have here today. I think the panel, the folks who are going to come up here and talk to you are going to give you some really good insights on why inclusion is the place where we can really make a huge difference and a huge impact. So with that being said, thank you again for being on this plane ride and making it all the way to the end. And Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Reggie. First of all, I'll say it again. Good morning, everyone. All right. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for waking up, coming back. You looked at your alarm. You had a choice, and you made the right one. You joined us. I don't take that for granted. You've all been amazing this whole time, but we are here at the end, but almost arguably our most important conversation about what we're all trying to do, how we work with each other to promote equity and opportunity, inclusion, make that impact. And before we get into our great panel, we just want to share one last example of what this looks like, especially with a connection to philanthropy. And you are going to hear from 3 of our congressional summer interns. And I just want to give a little context. when I used to work in more direct service youth programs, I used to run with a national organization with some people in this room. We used to bring 8th grade leaders from all across the country to Washington, D.C. in the summer. And then at some point, they would get to go on a bus to Capitol Hill and go meet their congressional staff from the offices of where their senators or congressmen. And usually we'd meet with a staffer. And these kids were 12, 13, 14 years old. And eventually they would ask the staffer, how did you get this job? And they would say to the kids, oh, well, I had to intern over the summer. And the kids would be like, that's amazing. You got to work here over the summer. That's great. And they said, how much did they pay you? And they said, nothing. And it was like a record, like scratch. What? What do you mean nothing? How do you do that? And we say this, summer, there's lots of ways to learn and grow and lots of opportunities, but a summer internship is a wonderful form of summer learning. An unpaid summer internship is one of the most unfair forms of summer learning. So I can't help everyone. Together we will help everyone, but we all have to do our part. And the NBA Foundation actually said, we believe in this project, and we put out a call, and we were able to last year fully fund all costs, all expenses included, an experience for 10 alumni of our award-winning summer learning programs to come to Washington, D.C., live in Washington, D.C., have a great internship experience with someone, a member of Congress, and use that experience for their careers, for their interests, to learn what they like, to learn what they don't like. To share a little bit more about what that looked like and felt like, I'd like to invite Zion, Romello, and Ren up to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Romello. I was one of the interns this summer. I just want to start off by saying thank you guys for being here. I'm appreciative of all the work you guys do, all the contributions that you guys provide. My experience with after-school program, I feel like I have the unique opportunity to be both on the student side and then as a staff member. So growing up, I was a part of an after-school program called Henry Street Settlement in New York, if any of you have ever heard of it. And that experience provided me a lot of opportunities, I feel like both professionally and personally. And then on the staff side, recently last year, I was an AmeriCorps Vista member at Horizons. Yeah. So I'm sure you guys have heard of Horizons, but yes, I was at the Denver, Colorado site, just essentially doing communications work for them. But I was able to see the logistical side behind an after-school, out-of-school time program like that, and all the necessities and I guess all the aspects that are involved in that. So having that perspective of both as a student and on the staff side, it allowed me to address the education world in a holistic way. I'd say just having all these experiences, I feel like also allowed me to continue my advocacy for education. I feel like it's obvious that it's an inequitable field. It's not suited for everyone. It's not providing the same resources for everyone, but programs like NSLA and Horizons and Henry Street Settlement, they definitely strive for equity and recognition for all students.
I'm Zion. Hello. I started with the Math Corps program, the wonderful Math Corps program. Absolutely. And I did that when I had to be 10 or 11. And, going into it, I remember my mom, I told her I didn't want to go to a summer camp. What are you talking about? I got to do math over the summer. I want to relax and watch cartoons. She said, try it for a week. If you don't like it, I'll take you out, whatever. I went for a week. I said, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. This is great. And little did I know that all of these years later, that program would lead me into NSLA, and that I would get chosen out of the Math Corps bunch to be able to do this internship on the Hill and be able to stand here in front of you and tell you how amazing both of these programs are and how amazing all of your programs are for all the children that you are helping. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Dovey, and one of my favorite after-school program is Angel Leap right in New Jersey. It stands for Law Education Empowerment Project. Growing up in the country Togo, West Africa, I didn't really have, public speaking was really limited, and I love public freedom of speech. I really love the freedom of speech, and I wanted to stand for justice. And migrating to the United States, when I heard about Angel Leap, which of course I said the law part, was the perfect opportunity for me to channel my legal skills and want to really learn about my constitutional right, which they really focus on, and getting students involved in their legal, their civil duties. And it was so much more than just constitutional debate and learn about my personal right, and just more. We had ACT prep. It also gave me the confidence to be in front of all of you because of the debate prep and public speaking. So I did that for 2 years, and it was. They followed me to college, and they helped me to just learn more about what it means to be a college student and reach for success, which I was also connected with Aaron. But my determined to continue in the policy and the legal field, it never stopped. So I had a dream to be on the Hill, and I majored in political science. I had a dream to just get to know people and get to know the legal ways of working in this country, and also to bring it back to my country. So it was a great experience. I got to work for my congressional woman, Maggie Shaw in New Jersey. And it was such an amazing, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. It was a dream come true for me. And I want to thank you all for all the work that you put in your after school program. For a kid like me to be in front of you today, and on behalf of all your students, I want to thank you, and please do not give up on your students. Thank you.
They're so humble that they forgot to tell you where some of them worked. Zion worked for Senator Gary Peters from Michigan. Romello worked for Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado. Ren, thank you for sharing. Zion, Romello has a job. I think Ren's still trying to choose between what she wants. And Zion's a senior at Dartmouth, and he's graduating, and he's also open to anybody who wants to come talk to him. So you now are the most powerful people in Washington, D.C., which is really all we care about doing. I now would love to bring up, I'm going to bring up a leader, a colleague, a board member of NSLA, someone who is such an inspiration to everyone who meets her and speaks with her, but who's had a long career of social justice leadership, of public service, servant leadership. Fatima Shama is currently the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer at Bloomberg LP, a huge job. She could share more about what that looks like. Before that, she was the CEO of the Fresh Air Fund, who won our national award yesterday. And before that, she was Commissioner of Immigrant Affairs for the City of New York, and she's done so much more, and she worked for the mayor, and she's had a million jobs, but she's been on all sides. She's been a board member of foundations, obviously running nonprofits, working in government. She's seen it all come together, but always with an equity lens. So I'd like to call her up as our moderator, and she's going to call up our panel. Fatima?
Hot down, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Bend down, isn't it a pity?
Hi, it's so good to see you, although I can't really see you. And this is the time when I tell you, you know how beautiful you look on a Wednesday morning? Because if no one told you, I need to be the first to tell you. So welcome. We are nearing the end, as Reggie shared. Aaron, thank you. What an inspiring 3 days. I hope that you all feel like your cups have been filled. I have been here for a couple of days, and I already feel that. NSLA often says summer learning is just another way to talk about promoting educational equity, creating opportunity, and building community. And I think for me, there are many words there that are really powerful. Reggie talked about opportunity and equity, but I want to lift community. I want to lift the reality that you sit in community with community. And so I started my career as an organizer. And so in the spirit of organizing, just a reminder that the people united will never, ever be defeated. So in this moment, if I could invite you to remember that sí se puede, right? We can do this, and you will do this. And 3 extraordinary young people just proved to us why we do this. You don't need them necessarily to keep reminding us, but if you needed that extra edge, I hope you just got it. But to do this, we need incredible partners in philanthropy. Partners who believe in this work, believe in you, invest in what we do. And so this next conversation is that. And so I am so excited to invite extraordinary colleagues to join me in this conversation. Shawn, Dove, Gwynn, and Michael, come on up. Let's have a conversation.
The bus stop running up the stairs, gonna meet you on the rooftop. But at night it's a different world.
So you will find in your pamphlets and in your in the app all of their bios. And so I won't read through their bios, but please read their bios because before you sits an extraordinary community of leaders in their work, in their leadership, and in their commitment to what you all do. So please, I ask you to take the time to realize where your story connects, but more powerfully, how their leadership really demonstrates their commitment to all of us in this space. And so, hi friends.
Hello.
Hi. So we're gonna talk. We'll talk about how we can get some money from you all. Okay. I'm with you. I am on your side. So here we go. Shawn, I want to start with you. We had a wonderful conversation last night, so thank you so much. And for the folks that were able to participate in that conversation, thank you. So you have done an incredible number of things on your journey. And now you sit, having led the campaign for Black Male Achievement, you've just released a book, I Too Am America, Loving and Leading for Black Men and Boys.
Yeah.
And now you're at New Profit.
Yes.
Can we talk about New Profit? What is New Profit? What are you doing there? All the strategy?
Sure. And you were absolutely awesome last night as a moderator for our conversation. And so New Profit is a venture philanthropy firm that's been around almost 25 years and was started by social entrepreneurs. And the vision and the practice of New Profit is really investing in breakthrough social entrepreneurs with unrestricted general operating capital, right? Which is really important in philanthropy because there is just an issue of just trusting leaders, right? And trusting leaders that are like closest to the solutions and the problems of what we deem as intractable problems. But we also provide capacity building support, infrastructure. I'm sure there are folks out in the audience that have like received grants and received funding and like, oh, how am I going to manage that? And so the strategy support. I think also as New Profit enters this 25th year, we've invested over $350 million since our founding to about 120 social entrepreneur-led organizations. And philanthropy is just so much more than the money. Yes, the money is important, but our role in just really doing actually what we're seeing happen right here at this conference, connecting leaders and building networks and leveraging and getting in the same room, not only practitioners, but practitioners, donors, folks from academia, cross-sector leaders. And what has attracted me to a New Profit, so at the heart of my work and my ministry is really improving life outcomes of Black men and boys and help to catalyze that movement with my colleague over here, Michael Smith. And the intersection of leading a movement and joining philanthropic movement at New Profit, and our vision is really to build multiracial, intergenerational, cross-sector coalitions for change. And it's hard work, right? It's hard work, and it's hard work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. When we were sitting together, there was a very special moment that I observed when Gwynn, Hughes, and Shawn met, and Gwynn is
More conversations ahead.
Yeah. Gwynn is the senior program officer at the Mott Foundation, and for all of you, the Mott Foundation has had an extraordinary long history in funding in after-school programs, and they made this beautiful connection around the Beacon schools and Beacon programs. So Gwynn, you've been at this a long time. The foundation you've been a part of has invested nearly $25 million over an extraordinary number of years to expand out-of-school time opportunities. You're leading that work, you have been. Can you share with us a little bit of perhaps why such a big commitment from Mott's perspective? And with that, the strategy and priorities that you continue to develop for our out-of-school time, after-school programs.
Sure, thank you so much. One piece I want to start with is just the incredible work that all of you have done over the past several years to literally alleviate suffering of young people. We have at the foundation, we're supporting a lot of efforts to collect data to tell this story. But what we do know, we already know the impact that you've had, and it is quite remarkable. $3.7 billion to date, and I haven't checked with the Alliance this morning, it's probably more than that, has been released out from education recovery funds to support new after-school and summer learning programs. That is tremendous. We haven't seen anything like that in decades. Even having the $30 billion from ARP that can be used for this type of programming for opportunities, this is really what we need. And talking about this question that Fatima's raising, and when I got to just meet with Shawn about, why has Mott made this our big bet? Because essentially that is how we see this. And it does start with the lighted schoolhouse in Flint, Michigan, where we began supporting, thank you for those of you familiar with the history, really finding ways to open school buildings to families, to community, to kids, recognizing that we have to serve the whole child, seeing that as a need to create opportunities, but with a real grounding in school and community partnerships. And that led to this program that I have the privilege of working on now for several years. For 2 decades now, we have built this infrastructure with many other funders, and I'm grateful for New York Life and their partnership that has seeded 50 statewide after-school networks, many programs and partners. And before the pandemic, I think part of this investment, and it has taken about $450 million over the past several decades. So, there's another $100 million that, Shawn, you can get to. Okay, so I like to do my fundraising too, Fatima, with my partners. Yeah. $450 million and counting. And this, infrastructure, I would say, was a little untested. When we got to the pandemic, and I have done this work for a decade now, longer than that, before the foundation, I had never seen anything like how all of you showed up, and you were actually creating partnerships on the fly. You were serving meals to kids. You were meeting their needs. We were forced to actually be seen in a way that we hadn't before, because we were thinking of how do we just get what kids need? How do we do this when schools are closed? So, it's a remarkable journey to see where this has gotten to at this point. The number of partnerships, it really is incredible. But there's more to do, right? And we'll get to talk about that, I think, next.
Perfect. Yeah. Michael, you are leading one of, as we just heard, the most prestigious programs, I think, in helping, as you shared last night, invest in community, right? The AmeriCorps model, the AmeriCorps program. And historically, the Corporation for National Service, now today commonly referred to as AmeriCorps, has been an incredible supporter of also investing hundreds of millions of dollars in organizations through human capital, through people, through leadership development, and more. And so I'd love to start centering, where does equity show up in that work? And how does AmeriCorps promote equity in its model, in its vision, quite frankly, and how you're taking that work to the next level?
Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for allowing me to be here today. This is wonderful to be at church with folks that we have such shared missions together. For those of you who don't know, AmeriCorps is a federal agency. We used to be called the Corporation for National Community Service, but no one had any idea what that meant. So we decided we would go by the name of AmeriCorps, which was our most known program offering. And we have been around for about 30 years. We have about 250,000 AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps senior volunteers that are serving in about 40,000 locations all across this country. So the scale is pretty significant. We invest nearly $1 billion every year in about 4,000 nonprofit organizations and with municipal partnerships and through our state service commissions. And the simple idea behind AmeriCorps is, how do you tap into the power of people service, like you saw on the stage today, about community-minded, proximate individuals who want to make a difference in their communities to tackle challenges great and small. And I am so proud that when it comes to this work, our largest footprint is actually in education. We have nearly 70,000 AmeriCorps members and foster grandparents that are serving in about 12,000 schools all across the country. And so when I think about equity, it is actually my number one priority coming into this agency. One, we have to make sure that AmeriCorps reflects the rich diversity of the country and the communities that we serve. Because what we all know sitting here today is that the people closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. And if we are bringing people from outside of communities and people who think they are doing something to a community and not a part of a community, then we've got it all wrong and we don't get to the solutions that we need. You know, I'm proud that AmeriCorps is actually more diverse than many people think it is. We've got a little bit of a perception problem. But for instance, AmeriCorps is 23% African American. We're actually more diverse racially than the nation. In California, we're 45% Latinx. So we're doing better, but where we need to go even further is making sure that there are more folks that are coming from community that are serving in their community. And I was with someone today who was here who just shared a story with me. He was a city year volunteer. He's from Prince George's County. Where are you? There's my brother right there. He served in city year in 2014 in Washington, D.C. He's from Prince George's County. He got his degree in civil engineering, but he got bitten by the bug. And once he did his city year service, he has spent his career in making sure that there are pathways to opportunity for kids just like him. So we need to make sure. We need to make sure that that is more of a story. And that just can't be a talking point. So I think any AmeriCorps partners or grantees here today? What's up, family? How you doing? So what you will know if you are a nonprofit, you know, Shawn talked about how easy it is to be a new profit grantee and general operations funding and how we need to make sure that we let good leaders do what they want. Well, we're the government, and it's not as easy. For those of you who are our grantees, you know. And so when it comes to making sure there are BIPOC-led organizations, organizations in rural communities, we have to simplify. I'm proud we hired our first ever chief modernization officer, and we are trying to make this pathway simpler so we have more grantees from the community. And then we have to make sure that we're doing the work so that we get more young men like the one that we saw on the stage today. Right now, our minimum living allowance, I'm embarrassed to say, is about $10 an hour. So if we don't have partners that are saying we're going to add money to the federal dollar, you're coming in and being asked to put a roof over your head and food in your belly for $10 an hour. And so President Biden at the White House just a couple months ago called on Congress to raise the living allowance for AmeriCorps members to $15 an hour by 2025, and we're going to get that done. So in order for us to center equity, we have to make sure that we're not just talking about it, but we're reducing barriers. The other thing that we have to do is make sure that there are clearer pathways between your service and finding a career pathway. So it's not just transformative for the community that you're serving, but transformative for the member who's serving as well.
Thank you so much. One of the questions that I want to ask Michael later, although what he just said might make me rethink him asking this, which is how does one become an AmeriCorps partner, but it is a huge burden, if you will, on some of our partners. But we'll get to that. We hear a lot about the importance of promoting equity. And I feel like I'm going to name it. I'm not sure everybody knows what that means, right? What does it mean when there's a desire to promote equity, but one might not necessarily know what that looks like, how to implement it. And Shawn, I think you've really led in this conversation. And so when you think about how do we help our colleagues understand, how do we start with the integration of equity at the core so that all things beautiful blossom from there?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I think number one, I think it starts with leadership. I think we spend so much time as leaders and often in the field of philanthropy, looking out the window, casting a vision, where are we going to sow seeds, and not enough time looking in the mirror, right? And looking at our own values and our own practices. I always say that it's real hard for Fatima to put racial equity icing on a cake that's baked with oppression, racism, and that when you bite into that cake, it's going to be the same bitter taste that we've been experiencing, right? And so when you think about equity, it's we hear buzzwords and we hear diversity and inclusion, equity, but there's a real sense of belonging, right? And how are we as leaders and institutions changing how we show up, increasing our empathy, increasing our compassion, and this is like really hard work. And it's one thing to talk about it, as Michael was saying, but how are we being about equity and practicing? Often what we're asking, in our grant applications, how are organizations demonstrating equity? We also have to look at our boards of trustees and where does the belief and practice of equity there. And then also, and Reggie and I were having this conversation, in philanthropy, and how we invest in our money, our management committees, because we can say and raise a flag for equity within our institutions in philanthropy, but then we pull the cover of how we are investing our money and what institutions and who's managing our money. And so these are really like hard conversations, one that you don't change overnight. I think that a great example is my organization, New Profit. In 2019, we commissioned some research just looking at philanthropic dollars and saw that only 4% of philanthropic dollars were going to people of color-led organizations. So I was kind of like looking out the window, but we were like, oh, let us look in the mirror. Where are our dollars going? And at that time, 70% of our dollars were going to predominantly, white institutions and white leaders. And we had to begin to do some hard work in changing how we practice. And so with equity, it's like, show me, right? Show me how it's showing up, how it's showing up in your practice. And the last thing I'll say before passing it on is, I think it's really more than just like counting people, right? It's like, do people feel like they are counted, right? And that there's a lot of performative measures, and how do people feel within our institutions, our communities, being seen, acknowledged, heard, and this sense of like this fierce urgency of empathy that's happening in their lives.
Amazing. Thank you, Shawn, for that. When we talk about community, for so many of us, and in fact, the Mott support for after-school alliances across the country, the power of that community is respectfully understanding what competition looks like, right? And actually how, in this work, we can't be about competition, right? So if we follow up with understanding, in some ways, Gwynn, what your expectations are, this conference is in many ways a model of bringing leaders together from across sectors where we can truly break down silos and understand, if I may, keeping our eye on the prize, which is our future, right, which is our young people. And so as a funder, how do you want to see systems sharing more together, working more closely together, so that the outcome is really about our young people?
So I think that the comments Shawn was making about equity and not working in silos are one and the same.
Yeah.
So I think the first step is we have to stop looking at these as separate issues. So, in philanthropy, we're all very committed to creating more opportunities for young people. But can you do that without understanding the lived experience of the young people that we're trying to create opportunities for in the communities? And so I think what we do now is, building off of what Shawn is saying, really take a look at what more can we be doing. We had some work that we did during the pandemic. It was to create an opportunity fund for after school and summer learning. And it was a coalition of funders. We all got together, we said, the field is trying to meet this need, what more can we do? How do we pool our resources, not duplicate effort? We did all these conversations, all well-intentioned. We get about 8 months in, and somebody raises their hand and says, we're missing many of the organizations who are led by leaders of color. How are we going to expand this notion of how we even solve a problem? And I think for funders, we have to actually look at how do we fund that? Not as an extra, but as a core part of the work, because what it came down to for the actual emergency on the ground work was needing more support to connect with all the different organizations. So if you're at the Urban League and you're trying to connect with after school, you're gonna need more capacity necessarily to do that type of work on top of what you're already doing. And I think we have to look at very specific, capacity building issues like that. I will say that, what has really stood out, in addition to this, dedication of all of you in terms of meeting young people where they are during the last couple of years, is that we now have a whole core. It's not just summer programs, after school programs, AmeriCorps. you are leaders as connectors, as innovators, as champions of diversity and opportunities. And rather than, I think we got to be careful because we're at that point now where the system's wants to go back, right, to where we were. It should not take a global pandemic to motivate the kind of systems change that we saw. Right, but now that we're kind of in this spot that we're in, whether it's over or it's not, I mean, we know it's a marathon, not a sprint for our young people. But as we move forward, how do we keep that momentum? And I think, from where we're sitting, the momentum is in all of you in terms of not just running awesome programs, because I know that's a big job, but it is in doing the connecting work, the partnership work, the learning more about what does my white privilege mean, what does your lived experience mean in every interaction that we can. And that's where I think we have a lot to work with moving forward.
Great, thank you so much for that. We have to ask the question of how does this room get to make some money for what they do? Because I have to say, we know everybody here appreciates what it means to fundraise. And so, Michael, when you think about the tables you've sat at, the roles you've had, the role you sit in today as a national government leader, and the opportunity and synergy around working with nonprofits, working with other government partners, how does this audience, what guidance would you give them around leveraging both the American Rescue Plan dollars around partnerships, or even how would they go out and raise money if they wanted to bring in AmeriCorps but have to fundamentally supplement for every FTE half of what you might be giving them? What guidance would you give to some of us in the room?
Sure, I think there's some great examples all across the country. One, if you think about the fact for AmeriCorps, for instance, if we're going to provide you, let's say $35,000 per AmeriCorps member, that's a pretty good start. In terms of money that you have to go out and raise if you're thinking about an FTE. Then when you also think about the living, not only the living allowance, but the education award that comes with. So we're seeing some really interesting work happening. For instance, in California, California Volunteers and the California State Service Commission, they're taking AmeriCorps dollars, they're taking state funding, they're taking ARP funding, and they have said, you know what? AmeriCorps, we appreciate what you're doing, but we need people to get more money and have to work fewer hours. And so they have been able to leverage the governor, local leaders, to bring philanthropy together, to bring local partners together, to raise the living allowance, so it's $15 an hour, using AmeriCorps dollars as a jumping off point, but also raising the education award, so it's $10,000, and they're saying you can do fewer hours, so you can do this part-time, for instance, while you're still going to school. We are in a constant learning posture. Our head of AmeriCorps State and National, Sonali Najawan, is here. She's actually the first head of AmeriCorps State and National that is an alum herself. And we are, that's right. And we are working as rapidly as we possibly can to change some of the policies and procedures, asking ourselves, why is it 1,700 hours of service for this amount of dollars? Why is the living allowance this? Why don't we think more creatively about housing? And so we are doing that work. And I would just invite folks, as I said earlier, we grant more than $1 billion a year. We are constantly looking for partners, and far too often it's the same folks getting funded year after year. And so not only would I encourage you to come to us and think about how you could apply, we have regional offices, but I would encourage some of you that are maybe more well-heeled, maybe white-led organizations, maybe large organizations, to think about how you're creating a seat at the table for others. Yeah, it's hard until I fix it. Until we fix this process, yeah, it's hard to potentially run this federal grant. But can I be an intermediary for smaller nonprofits that are BIPOC-led or faith-based organizations? Can I make them a sub of my work? Can I provide the training and technical assistance? Can I make them a partner? And so not only thinking about how you are serving a community, but that you're bringing leaders from those communities so that they can get the resources as well.
That's fantastic. I know that we likely have after-school alliance leaders in the space. And if you aren't familiar with your local, if you will, collaborative of out-of-school time partners in your wherever you live, I'm sure the NSLA can help with that. But it is so critical because in coalition is where you can leverage so much of this opportunity, right? Because I certainly know I started my career in a small community-based organization. That experience was really different than having led a large community-based organization where I thought it was my responsibility to ensure that I was supporting our smaller community-based organizations. And so I ask us to remember that in that work actually is the depth of, quite frankly, actioning our commitment to equity and inclusion. And so with that, please join me in thanking this panel for this conversation. I'm sure that each one of these incredible people will be able to offer a lot more guidance in how you can continue to identify dollars, identify opportunities. And so we're going to hand this off because we are actually the thing that stands between you being able to wrap and go home to your next chapter. And so Aaron, back to you.
Okay, thank you to an amazing panel. We're gonna just wrap up. Please stay seated because we have amazing final piece to our day right now. But thank you, Michael, Gwynn, Shawn, Fatima. We're trying to bring every stakeholder we can into this room so we could know who's gonna help us as we leave this room. We're on the clock. We know summer is coming, and you know when it starts for you, but it's October. So nothing's gonna sneak up on us, and we're gonna make great things happen. I have a few housekeeping, and I just wanna share one final thing, and we have a real special treat for you. So first of all, thank you to our exhibitors because we've been having this like whole raffle grand prize activity going on, and we have our grand raffle winners, but we've listed them in your app. So if you could check your app, and then if you are named one of the winners, please go to the NSLA booth and you'll get that. Here's what we know. This conference was sold out. It sold out almost a month ago. This conference next year, we know the dates. It's gonna be October 9th through 11th in this hotel. I will tell you 100%, it will be sold out. So I'm sad to say inflation is affecting all of us. Gas prices, your milk, your eggs, and it may affect how much this hotel charges me and how much we need to charge everybody to come. So to motivate people to sign up at a lower rate, there are 100 tickets for next year's conference available if you sign up today at the summerlearning.org website. Just go and donate. There's an early bird rate for next year, but we only have 100 tickets. So if you want to be here for sure, get your spot, please take action later today. And then just to really conclude, and we have, again, a special treat. So we have had an amazing conference, and we've talked about how summer learning especially is a time for interconnectedness. And you heard from Lily. Remember Lily and her camp experience and the American Camp Association and Sterling and Urban Library Council. And she did, by the way, have a great experience with Sonia Sotomayor yesterday. She had an hour with her at the Supreme Court. And that only happened because so many groups came together to help a young person. And then you heard about how summer is a time of improvement with the former U.S. Secretary of Education, John King, and a current student from one of the past award winners, Jamora from Breakthrough Collaborative. And they were talking about how the program she was part of, Youth Leadership Institute, not only helped her, but it helped her chaperone. And everybody was learning and getting new skills they brought back to the current year and going forward. And then you heard about summer as a time of innovation. You heard our award winners, and you met our innovation fellows. And then you heard from Tom Friedman, who's I don't know, still considered the smartest guy to me today, one day later, amazing. But talking about how we're all have to keep being entrepreneurial, even if you've been around for 100 years. You gotta be hungry, you gotta be thinking, always be in beta, as he reminded us, and so did our innovation fellows. And then right now, we just heard about how summer really is a time of impact at the national level, like Michael talking about what AmeriCorps could do and what could happen at the state level with Gwynn and our in the Mott after-school alliances, the after-school alliance and state networks, and CCSSO, who are working with state education agencies and so many state education departments here, and then at the district level, local, and Shawn, everything you're investing in, and Fatima bringing in corporate and all the partnerships, but then impact on the personal level. Because at the end of the day, this is all about improving and changing people's lives, especially lives of young people, and we heard that from Zion and Ren and Romello. And so that's what this is all about. This is hard work. We are all here in this together. NSLA is here to support you. I can't wait to see when we set that goal of making sure every kid in America, but especially the most vulnerable, have a great after-school and summer learning experience. We're gonna make that happen together. We are gonna be with you side by side. It might end the conference, it doesn't end the conversation. And just know how grateful we are for each and every one of you and what you're gonna do and how you're gonna grow your programs in 2023. And so let me just say thank you. Thank you to all our sponsors, our exhibitors, our summer learning champions, our national board, our staff, all the consultants, everyone who made this possible. And as a farewell, I'd like to welcome the DMV Music Academy, reminding us why we do this work and to give us a final wonderful send-off. Thank you for being part of this. I look forward to seeing you next year, everybody, and working with you as we get closer to the summer. Thank you.